So if you believe Alan Lichtman, Kamala Harris will become president of the United States. Now, I'm going to explain why he says that, and we're going to go through each of his points. But I just want to give a caveat. I did this before with Peter Zion's predictions here, and then Biden dropped out. So after Peter Zion predicted Biden will win for these reasons, and I went through them one by one, and they seem like reasonable predictions. And I'm not trying to push for either candidate here. I'm trying to help you explain and understand context, but we're going to walk through this. Now, what's interesting here is that if you look at if you just Googled Kamala Harris Trump polls and you just look at the headlines, who do you think will be a better president? NPR polls shows why the stakes are so high for Harris and Trump in a debate. The debate is tonight, by the way. Trump and Harris neck and neck after summer upheaval. Election 2024 live updates. Harris and Trump face off in the debate. Harris versus Trump. New presidential poll. Are these once loyal voters rejecting polling guru Nate Silver predicts Trump has 64% chance of winning. New poll finds Harris ahead of Trump. Okay, so where are we? Well, Alan Lichtman is a historian, and he believes he has the keys to understanding what's going to happen in a presidential election and why. So let's look at what he has to say. This is from an article in The Hill. Notable elections forecaster predicted Vice President Harris will win November's election according to his model of 13 keys. Now, he's predicted 9 out of the last 10 successfully, so let's see what he has to say. It's worth listening to. Alan Lichtman, a historian who has successfully predicted the outcome of 9 of the last 10 presidential elections, revealed he believes Harris will clinch victory over former President Trump. His election model is based on 13 true or false questions that ignore polls and pollsters. Okay, so here are the keys. These 13 keys include these. Now, I'm going to go through the keys, but you'll see it highlighted. I'm going to actually read the rest of the article, and then we'll come back to the keys. So the highlighted ones break for Trump, and the other ones break for Kamala Harris. Okay, the keys absolutely will work. They are the constant northern star of political prediction, Lichtman says. He found that 8 of the keys are true, and those favor Harris. 3 of the keys are false, and they favor Trump. Now, the White House party gained the House seats in 2022 midterm elections. The Democrats did better than expected, but they still lost House seats, so that first key is false. Then, the sitting president is running for re-election. Biden withdrew from the race, costing the Democrats this key, and so it's false. Again, the incumbent generally has a huge advantage over a challenger. And third, the incumbent's party candidate is charismatic. This is a very high threshold key. You have to be a once-in-a-generational, broadly inspirational candidate. Harris has not met that standard, so this key is false. He's saying Harris is not charismatic enough to qualify for that particular key. Okay, so a little bit more. Lichtman said the remaining 2 keys, including a foreign policy failure or a foreign policy success, could still flip in Trump's favor before the election. Foreign policy is tricky, and these keys could flip. The Biden administration is deeply invested in the war in Gaza, which is a humanitarian disaster with no end in sight. But even if both foreign policy keys flipped false, that would mean that there were only 5 negative keys, which would not be enough for Donald Trump to regain the White House, because he has to have a majority of these 13 keys in Lichtman's model. While he predicted Harris would win the race, he previously said Democrats' only chance of winning was if Biden stayed in the race. So he thought that Biden could win. Biden didn't even think that Biden could win when he dropped out. Okay, the polls were just breaking against him, and Biden thought, I have to give. He didn't want to give, but he did for the sake of the party. Okay, 13 keys. Now, again, if it's highlighted, this is breaking for Trump. If it's not highlighted, it's breaking for Kamala Harris. So the 13 keys include whether, first, the White House party gained seats in the House in the midterm elections, and it's for Trump. That's 1 down. The incumbent president is running. Nope, Biden stepped out. Kamala is not the same as the incumbent, so false. Okay, those are 2 for Trump. Third, the White House party avoided a primary contest. That's true. Biden sailed right through that process. It was not contested. And then Kamala won the party nomination when Biden dropped out without any real fight. So that's breaking for Kamala. A third party candidate is running. Well, yes and no. It looks like Kennedy just recently dropped out. And so that's not on the table anymore. So I'm not sure how that plays out here. Short-term economy is strong. Okay, so this is where we're going to have some problems with the short-term economy is strong and growth of the long-term economy has been as strong as the last two terms. Okay, so when you're looking at the economy, you have to break it up into two different parts. The Democrats will tend to point at the health of the economy by talking about the stock market. And it is very true that the stock market is doing reasonably well, at least at this point. But if you're asking the average person about inflation, a stick of butter at Walmart is now $1 each for just a stick, not the pack. And so many people feel it in their pocketbooks. And if they're not political, but they feel it in their pocketbooks, I think this one actually might break for Trump for at least a certain segment of the population. But even that is not enough to give Trump the advantage. Okay, the White House has enacted major national policy changes. Okay, that's fine. There is no social unrest. There is, but it's so marginal. The social unrest is like limited to college campuses and things like that about Palestine. There's really not anything like the Tea Party or Black Lives Matter or something of that kind of caliber going on right now. So that breaks for Harris as well. There's no scandal in the White House. Well, I don't see any forthcoming. There always could be an October surprise, but as far as we know, there is no scandal in the White House. That breaks for Kamala. The incumbent party candidate has charisma. No, she's not really that charismatic. I know some people will argue with that, but he's saying no, she's not, and that breaks for Trump. Still not enough to get him there. The challenger is uncharismatic. Now, this is the flip side of that. If you ask Republicans, especially MAGA Republicans, they'll argue that he is very charismatic, just like some Democrats would argue that Kamala might be charismatic. Now, in 2016, I would say that Trump was more charismatic because he was less known. But after a presidential term, he's a known entity, and he's charismatic only to his base, not to the broad population. The White House has had foreign policy success, or the White House has had foreign policy failure. Now, this one's interesting. We know that Israel-Gaza is a quagmire, and that's hard to get out of. But if Ukraine could be turned into a success, if the Biden administration would arm Ukraine with what it needs to be able to really hit back at Russia and show that Ukraine was on the move, they could turn that into a foreign policy success and win that. But they're not willing to do that because they're afraid that some sort of escalation will turn people off, and so they won't do anything, at least not before the election. Now again, Lichtman says that the keys absolutely will work. They are the constant northern star of political prediction. I don't know if he's right. He's predicting it. He might be right. He's been right 9 out of 10 times. So what do you think? Put it in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're new to my channel, I do daily updates on Ukraine. Please consider subscribing. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about the world that we live in.